Just in case. Good evening, everybody. Esteemed faculty, administrators, deans, bigwigs, head honchos, top dogs, dignitaries, and bosses. And by bosses, I mean each and every one of you. You are a boss if you're graduating tonight. Now, for those of you who want clarity on what it means to be a boss in 2019, a boss is a person who knows what they want, knows how to go after what they want, and who often gets what they want. And that is how you all ended up here today in your cap and gowns. This is a huge honor for me to be a part of your day. Thank you so much for including me. And I realized I actually don't think it's really appropriate for me to offer you any advice because we're all adults here. And I think more accurately, even though this is a little bit crude, we're all grown-ass people. So I think I could learn a lot from each and every one of you. So while I can't dazzle you with any great piece of wisdom because you're already wise, what I can do is offer you a story that might inspire you, or that you might be able to draw something from, or that you could touch on when you have one of those really bad days, the day that's the opposite of today. A really big part of my job as a journalist is to tell stories, to find stories that help us understand the world, each other, maybe learn a thing or two, stories that can lead to a call to action. And the story I want to tell you has some parallels with CUNY School of Professional Studies. As I learned in my research, you guys all know this, CUNY SPS, is not that old. And in this time, in these just 15 years, it's achieved so much great success. You should be also proud to graduate from CUNY CPS. But it's interesting that in the literature I read, that it was started because there was a need. It was meeting a need, a population that was underserved, working adults, real people with real lives. And that's where the story I want to tell you begins, with a school that was founded to address a need, a school that wound up actually changing this country. It started to create a movement, not only for people who were underserved, but people who had never been served by education. I want to tell you about the first public high school in the United States for African Americans. It started with 4 students in the basement of a church in 1870 in Washington, D.C. It was founded by some forward-thinking free black men, free colored people as they called them in Washington, D.C. at the time. The US government actually set aside money after the Civil War because there were going to be all these free black children running around. It was part of Reconstruction. And nobody in power actually ever thought the schools would be more than anything elementary. But these men in D.C., they had this radical idea. They were going to create a public high school, a college preparatory school for black students. And I want you to remember, I want you to put this in place and time. It was quite literally illegal in a large part of the country to teach a black or colored person to read or write. This is the exact language of a North Carolina law. An act to prevent all persons from teaching slaves to read or write. Whereas the teaching of slaves to read or write has a tendency to excite dissatisfaction in their minds and to produce insurrection and rebellion to manifest injuries of the citizens of the state. Therefore, be it enacted by the General Assembly of the State of North Carolina that any free person who shall hereafter teach or attempt to teach any slave within the state to read or write or use of figures, or shall give or sell such slave or slaves any books or pamphlets, shall be liable to indictment in any court of record in this state, at the discretion of the court. A white man or woman be fined no less than $100, no more than $200, or imprisoned. And if a free person of color shall be fined, imprisoned, or whipped at the discretion of the court, not exceeding 39 lashes, nor less than 20. Be it further enacted that if any slave shall hereafter teach or attempt to teach any other slave to read or write, or the use of figures, he or she shall be sentenced to receive 39 lashes on his or her bare back. Now that was if it actually even made it to a court. In some places we know about plantation justice. It could be much worse. I don't know if you remember that movie, 12 Years a Slave, that Oscar-winning movie from years ago, where a free black man is captured and dragged back to the South and treated as a slave. And the one thing in the movie that he's trying to hide is that he can read or write, because that's the thing that makes him dangerous. So if you go back to, with this in mind, think about this. Educating blacks to go to college was radical. It was anarchy. Yet the free black community of Washington, D.C. rallied around this idea. It took them 3 tries to get the money from Congress, and they did. It wasn't a lot. It was enough to hire 1 teacher. But then they got money to hire another and another. In the first decade of the school, the word got out around the country that there was a school that would train bright black children to go to college. And as they said in the movie, build it and they will come. The school moved from building to building as it continued to grow, and it attracted an amazing faculty. The first black graduate of Harvard, Richard T. Greener, was a principal. When he left, he was followed up by the first black woman to get a 4-year degree, Mary Jane Patterson from Oberlin. Because of Jim Crow laws, many of the first blacks to go to certain colleges, medical schools, law schools, they couldn't find work. They couldn't get jobs. Many of them came to teach at this high school. As a result, the school produced 2 or 3 generations of hyper-educated African Americans who went on to break all the glass ceilings in segregated America. They were on a mission, these teachers. It wasn't a job. By 1919, this school was called by the NAACP the greatest Negro high school in the world. There was nothing like the school before. Nothing like it before those 4 students in the basement of a church. This kind of education didn't exist. It was invented. It was to fill a need. It survived and it thrived. The school produced the first black general, Benjamin O. Davis, the first black federal judge, William Hastie, the artist Elizabeth Catlett, whose work you can see down at MoMA, jazz musician and director of the Kennedy Center, Billy Taylor, civil rights activist Mary Church Terrell, the first black popularly elected senator, Ed Brooke, Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton, the first black graduate of the Naval Academy, the first black person to win a Pulitzer Prize for classical music, 3 of the lawyers who argued Brown versus the Board of Education, and of course, the very famous, he was known as the man who killed Jim Crow, the great Charles Hamilton Houston, all came from this one school. Now, you might think a school like this would have a highfalutin motto, some highfalutin Latin thing, but the motto of the school was, keep a plugging away. It's a title of a poem by the great groundbreaking poet, black poet Paul Laurence Dunbar, for whom the school was named. I spent 7 years researching this school and interviewing graduates who were in their 70s and their 80s and their 90s about their experience, and every one of them could recite this poem by heart. And they would even say it to each other as they said goodbye. They'd say, hey, keep plugging away. So I'm going to read you the poem. I have a humble little motto that is homely though it's true. Keep a plugging away. It's a thing when I have an object that I always try to do. Keep a plugging away. When you've rising storms to quell, when opposing waters swell, it will never fail to tell. Keep a plugging away. If the hills are high before and the paths are hard to climb, keep a plugging away. And remember that successes come to him who bides his time. Keep a plugging away. From the greatest to the least, none are from this rule released. Be thou toiler, poet, or priest, keep a plugging away. Delve away beneath the surface, the treasure is farther down, keep a plugging away. Let the rain come down in torrents, let the threatening heavens frown, keep a plugging away. When the clouds have rolled away, there will come a brighter day. All your labor to repay, keep a plugging away. There'll be lots of sneers to swallow. There'll be lots of pain to bear. Keep a plugging away. If you've got your eye on heaven, some bright day you'll wake up there. Keep a plugging away. Perseverance still is king. Time its sure reward will bring. Work and wait unwearying. Keep a plugging away. I love that poem. So I hope that story about Dunbar inspired you, and I hope it gave you some perspective about education. But I want to point out something I think is kind of funny. This idea of perseverance as the main quality necessary to succeed has really come into vogue lately. A couple of years ago, a very respected professor at an Ivy League university gave a TED Talk, has been viewed 10 million times, and she wrote a book that was a huge bestseller called Grit, Why Passion and Resilience Are the Secrets to Success. You think? Ask those thousands of Dunbar graduates who persevered during a time when the law of the land was written to hold them down. My spidey sense tells me that you guys know something about grit and perseverance and resilience. That's why you're here today. And it's no accident or a fluke. And it's not just something you were supposed to do. You chose to do this. And not to take anything away from our fellow 21 and 22-year-old graduates or anything, but a lot of people go to high school and then roll into college and roll into graduate school. They just go with the tide. No tide brought you here. You got a boat, you put it in the water, you took out your oars, and you rowed. You earn the right to make the choice about what you do next. And it is your choice. I know a lot of speakers suggest you go out, you make a name for yourself, make a grand gesture, and that's okay if that is what you want to do. But I mentioned all those bold-faced names, those people who are in the history books who went to Dunbar High School. But there were thousands more people who just went on to live their lives as best they could. Worked in the post office, some were teachers, small business owners. They didn't end up on postage stamps or in history books. They had families, they were good members of their communities and their churches. They didn't cause some huge seismic shift in the world, but they made the world that they came in contact with a little bit better. I know two of those Dunbar graduates who did that. My mom and dad went there in the 40s when it was segregated. And my mom was a science teacher, a biology teacher, and just last week, I got a letter from a woman who was a doctor who said she was inspired by taking my mom's class. And my dad, who spent most of his life on 143rd Street, before his parents took him away from New York and sent him to Dunbar to go to high school, because as my grandmother said, nobody said Joe Stewart in college in the same sentence. Well, he went on to graduate from Harvard Business School before Brown versus Board, so think about that. He was an amazing man. And he spent much of his career and his time quietly helping young men and women who grew up like he did. And they had two pretty decent kids. My sister, she's a dentist. She moved to Richmond, Virginia, which was the capital of Confederacy, and they had never seen a black lady dentist before when she opened her practice. She educated a few people. And me, I get 2 hours on a program to broadcast on the largest public radio station in the country, where I can invite all voices into the conversation. And it's a job, I'm gonna tell you, I got this job 3 weeks after my 52nd birthday, after not working full-time for a long period. I was taking care of my child. I was taking care of my ill parents. They've since passed away. I was helping out family members who were in trouble. Middle-aged black ladies don't usually get jobs like I got, until they do. So I feel you, I really do. And with that in mind, there's a quote kind of going around Instagram lately. Maybe it's just because my friends are all people of a certain age. And the quote is, "You're not too old and it's not too late." And it's a great sentiment, but it's not the full quote, I found out. The full quote, it's from a German artist, is, "You're not too old and it's not too late to dive into your increasing depths where life calmly gives out its own secrets. So know that your secrets await. All you have to do is keep plugging away." Once again, congratulations and have a good night.